What is going on, guys? This is Splurge, your coach of the Bracknell Beadles, bringing you BBL Season 2, Week 5. And this week we have a mammoth task. We are facing the king, his name being Gypsy. I said that weirdly, Gypsy, even. Who is currently on a storming record, and we definitely are not. He is 4-0, and we are 0-4. But we're hoping to you never know, maybe we might be able to luck this one. Going into the so prep wise, Gypsy made a couple of changes just before our week, which I don't know, they kind of played into our favour, but also completely and utterly shredded some opportunities that we had. But so his team, the team that we were going to have to face was a Magina, Landretharian, Ho-Oh, Ferrothorn, Buzzwole, Tapu Fini, Megalatios, Marini, Alolan Grimer, and Regigigas. The main issue here is, of course, that Gypsy's managed to get a squad where basically he just has setup sweeper stacked upon setup sweeper, which also a lot of them appreciate. They appreciate choice items as well, so I'm never quite sure how to go about this. So I actually created two teams for this game. I had like a relatively calm team, which was based around Screens, Solgaleo, and an Alolan Golem that put in the finest of work. But so I decided to, after I put in quite a lot of effort into mocking this, so I didn't completely and utterly get embarrassed. And so I decided to actually go for the slightly more wacky team. And so you'll see here what's kind of going on in the first 2 months. So we first have a Solgaleo running Protective Pads, Full Metal Body, running Trick Room, Sunsteel Strike, Rock Slide, and Flare Blitz, with 244 HP, 252 Adamant, well, not Adamant, actually Brave, with 12 defense. This is the linchpin to me doing either very well or very badly. Yeah. So it's got a couple of interesting options here. So Sunsteel Strike is a nice blanket coverage hit to most of his mons. Rock Slide is specifically for Ho-Oh, and then Flare Blitz is to deal with Ferrothorn. Where so originally this was Sunsteel Strike, Rock Slide, and Zen Headbutt, and it didn't actually have protective pads either. But with that setup, Ferrothorn could easily wall this thing out, and actually, after doing a bit of extra calcing, I reasoned that I could probably switch Zen Headbutt for Flare Blitz, whereas if I took off Rock Slide, then I wasn't doing enough damage to Ho-Oh. Now, so the reason why this is so integral is my second one, which is Sylveon, Karma Police. Who's running Leftovers is Cute Charm this week, because you never know, we might get lucky with the whole legendary squad that you never know, we might actually get a gender mon. Running Substitute, Heal Bell, Curse, Baton Pass. Now, so a couple of things that you should know. In the BBL, Baton Pass is allowed. Baton Pass is quite freely allowed as well. The only thing that you're not allowed to do is pass positive boosting speed. And so this is why Solgaleo is so potent here, is the fact that so at +2, Solgaleo is able to OHKO most variants of Magina. It is able to clear out versus Ferrothorn. It is able to clear Ho-Oh. It is able to clear most of his squad, whilst being able to tank the hits from the mons which it needs to, such as Landorus, because of course Curse raises the defense. The only real issue with this kind of setup, originally from what I had thought, was either a special Ho-Oh, which I thought was highly unlikely because Sacred Fire is such an easily spammable move, or a some sort of Calm Mind Megalatios, which had set up in front of Sylveon to an extent and had Shadow Ball or something like that on it. What I hadn't considered was I won't say. We'll leave it to the battle. But yes, there was one particular thing that I didn't consider. And so it is quite a nice place to be in. So if we're able to set up just a single curse, I believe it's a roll for uninvested Ho-Oh to not actually break our substitute. It is at +2, a guaranteed that we take 2 hits from a Ho-Oh, and I believe we are also able to live a Gyro Ball from Ferrothorn. The only issue versus this was Magearna, if it was running effectively anything. But so if Magearna comes in, we immediately go into Soldier Lair to set up the Trick Room. Our third one is Landorus, who is running Yashi Berry, Sheer Force, Rock Slide, Earth Power, Focus Blast, Hidden Power Flying. Again, a little bit of an interesting set. No HP Ice, because actually I needed HP Flying for Buzzwole. I played a handful of mocks where Buzzwole did not turn up at all, and I was relatively happy. I then played shoutouts to Aaron2420. I mocked with Aaron for 2 battles. Buzzwole turned up in both and utterly destroyed both of my prep teams. So I needed something which was a little bit more of a firmer check to it. We are living a +1 Ice Punch through Yashi, and then guaranteed KOing with Hidden Power Flying. Rock Slide also does a huge amount of damage to Ho-Oh. Earth Power is a nice blanket, and Focus Blast also is out there to chip both the Regigigas, which was also a huge threat to my squad, and the Ferrothorn. We can then get on to Salazzle, Myxomatosis, running Black Sludge, Corrosion of course. This is our HP Ice Mon, running Sludge Wave, Fire Blast and Toxic. This is quite a bulky set. In its speed creeping Megalatios. It was originally a substitute set, but I needed an HP Ice Mon. And so this was originally substitute, which meant that Subtoxic was actually quite nice for us in this game, but there was an amount of needs and musts, and I really needed the Sludge Wave for Tapu Fini as well, and the Fire Blast for Ferrothorn, and Gypsy has too many mons to really try and safely counter, especially with my squad. As it was, it may have been slightly easier with the transactions that I made for week 6, which we will talk about at the end. But yeah, so our 5th mon is Mega Gyarados. This is running a substitute Dragon Dance Waterfall Earthquake, running effectively max speed, max attack. This was another interesting one in that. So if we didn't Mega and we substituted, unless Ferrothorn was running Power Whip or Thunderbolt, it could take a hit. And at +2, we were a roll to 2-hit KO Ferrothorn, and also we were a roll to 2-hit KO Tapu Fini. Really only the 2 mons that I expected to be invest this, because everything else does not like taking a Waterfall or an Earthquake or a Crunch. And then finally we have Giratina, running Lefties, Pressure, Defog, Dragon Pulse, Calm Mind, Shadow Ball. This is running a nice spread where We take Moonblasts from Finny very well. Flare Cannons from McGinn are less so well. And then, unless you're a Megalatios, nothing can touch this. And it does really, really well. But yeah, so words. Going into the battle, what we see. So first of all, this is from Gypsy's side. It meant that we could save some time for our recorders, which I was happy to do for this week because we actually were quite late for this game. There was a bit of a backup for both mine and Gypsy's games, kind of across different leagues. So we couldn't actually play it until halfway into the week after when it was supposed to be due. So what we see here is that Gypsy King here has brought Tapu Fini, Lando T, Ho-Oh, Magina, Megalatios, and Ferrothorn. I was bouncing at the sight of no Buzzwole. I'm going to quickly need to take a drink. One sec. Back again. Yeah, so we were jumping at that, and suddenly a thought came to mind, which I hadn't really considered, which up until this point, which was I was always leading Gyarados here, because if he leads Landorus, we get the dual Intimidate off on each other. And he leads Pharaoh, we just click Substitute, and the other mons don't particularly like leading versus Gyarados. But so what I hadn't really thought about until seeing the matchup was what a offensive Tapu Fini could do. And so, yeah. I kid you not, I was thinking about this before we even started, and what we'll see here is that my worst nightmares basically turn up immediately, because I wasn't entirely sure how I was actually going to combat a setup Tapu Fini. And so what we see here is that so Tapu Fini leads versus our Gyarados. I go for the substitutes, so quite speedy, just to see what Gypsy feels like clicking. And so what we see here is I do go for the substitute, and Tapu Fini immediately clicks Calm Mind. And so I start calculating for this, once we are at +1, we are able to take a hit outside of substitute. We're doing around about 40% to Tapu Fini, I believe. But so we needed to have set up at least one Dragon Dance, which meant that we had no substitute, and so ultimately we were going to be losing out this 1v1, and I couldn't really afford to try and make a switch into something else, because I needed health on everything else too much. But so what we see here is that I go for the Earthquake outside of Mega, because we just want to be able to be patient with this now. So here I went for a bit of an interesting play, and I just quickly want to explain it. So I click Substitute here instead of going for the Earthquake again immediately, which lets... Oh wait, no. So the Tapu Fini goes for Protect, as I go for the Earthquake. And so having seen that play and how Gypsy was looking to try and maintain HP, I clicked Substitute here on the presumption that what we were going to see was a Lando T switch, or a Ho-Oh switch or something along those lines. As if he preserved Tapu Fini here, it really caused a whole lot of issues for my squad. Even with a Salazzle there at +1, we were we weren't. I think it was a roll in his favour to not 2-hit KO. So I subbed there, but so having seen that he's still just going to stay in, I decided at this point just to sack off Mega Gyarados. It's done its job to effectively neutralise Tapu Fini. The issue here is that one of the big things with Gypsy's team is that he's managed to collect a selection of mons which do well in just ensuring that they're still alive. And so we go for the Sludge Wave, because if we do anything else and lose out there, then we're in a really sorry state. And so we're fortunate enough to get the poison on Ho-Oh, which is really quite nice. And so we switch in Giratina here because this Ho-Oh cannot touch Giratina. Unless it has some uber heat, it shouldn't. And so what we see here is that for the poison, we get in return a crit burn. Sacred Fire, which still does not much, but so it's negating the effects of my leftovers now, which is a bit of an issue. We talked post-game, and so one of the things which had Gypsy worried was whether I was a rest set or not. But so what we see here is the Ho-Oh goes for Roost, as we immediately start setting up, because, you know, two can play at this game, and if we're at +1, there are very few things that can actually take 2 hits from Giratina here. It was if we were at +2. If we were at +2, then there was very few things. And so what we see here is that Ho-Oh switches out, and in comes Tapu Fini, as I believe we just set up a second Calm Mind. Another swig of water. And so at this rate, I had to quickly calc about what was going to happen if we started having a Calm Mind race. Because there have been too many times when I've made the stupid error of just thinking that I can carry on Calm Mind and I'll win the 1v1 out of it and suddenly have a +6 and usually it ends up the other way round. But what you see here is that Tapu Fini immediately doubles back out as he goes into Ferrothorn. And so, having seen what Ferrothorn has done in other games, I was really confused about this play to begin with, because it's like, Ferrothorn can't touch Giratina. You're just giving me another opportunity to have a free Calm Mind. And so, what we actually see here though, first, is that the Leech Seed comes out, which at first, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's fair enough. But it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at this rate. He's definitely chipping Giratina, and I'm reluctant to switch out at this point, as we see a Shadow Ball go in, which he lives on 15, which was kind of unfortunate. I don't know how much of a roll it was, but it definitely hurt. And so we see the knockoff from Ferrothorn, and it's like, oh, okay, yes, no, of course. Ferrothorn gets knockoff. I was warned about this, and I was like, and I responded, no, he won't be running knockoff, but Gypsy, of course, will be. And so I view this as a good enough time to go into Sylveon, as he also switches into Ho-Oh. And so now we get to an interesting position where we start having the fun and games about substituting and cursing. So what we see here is that actually the Sacred Fire misses, which gives us a free substitute, which was really quite nice. It meant that we were in a much better shape for this kind of small bit of the game. So the Sacred Fire this time hits, and so it breaks the substitute. However, what we see here is that with the curse, we should now be able to set up a substitute, and it's a roll in our favour for the substitute to stay versus Sacred Fire. I'll admit that for all of the games that I've had currently which have had very poor hacks, this is the one game that has had relatively equal hacks both ways, of slightly in my favour. And so what we see here is the Toxic from Gypsy into the Sylveon as we set up the substitute again. And so here we are able to reveal Heal Bell, which puts us in a really quite nice position actually, because we still have our leftovers, of course, and we're in a position where it is becoming easier and easier to sit in front of this Ho-Oh. We see here that we've Heal Belled off the poison, and we've also cured Giratina's burn, which is quite nice. So we take no more chip from that. And so the poison now started to grate on Ho-Oh, so Gypsy switches it out, and he goes into Magearna. Now, so this is the point where I should have realised something, and I didn't. What you see here is that I go for the second curse, as I was confident that we could go through the whole Toxic thing again. And this time we were guaranteed to live the Sacred Fire into the Sylveon. And so what we see here is Shadow Ball from Magearna. And so that should have set off alarm bells in my head. It didn't, because I was so excited that I managed to get a +2 Solgaleo in to a position where it could actually do a fair amount of damage. So what we see here is, so I was going to go for the Trick Room because I felt that, so even with a Shadow Ball, we were able to comfortably live it and then start causing a whole lot of damage. But what we actually see here is that we have a Shadow Ball Z come out from Magearna, and at this point I absolutely bricked myself because I didn't know the calc. And so I quickly calced it, and so I believe there was a very, 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 very slight roll, but it was all the way in my favour for it. So we live it, but we're very low on health, which kind of limits Solgaleo's possibilities to destroy us. But so we now have the Trick Room up, and we're able to go for the Sunsteel Strike, and we take down the darn Magearna. So this is one game that Magearna doesn't come in, set up, and then clear off. And so here was the next issue. So what we've just seen is that the Pharaoh actually underspeeds Solgaleo. I hadn't thought about that. It was kind of I had kind of like 2 or 3 turns of just momentary lapse whilst I force of willed the position. And so Pharaoh is able to take out Solgaleo. And so what we see here is that, so I had the Salazzle in versus Pharaoh, but so I make a double into Giratina and trying to predict something else switching in. I wasn't exactly sure what, but I was confident that Giratina was able to take some sort of hit. And so we see that Ho-Oh didn't want to hang around, and so we fat calm-minded straight up in its face. So Tapu Fini now comes in, and so as with everything, I'm kind of frantically bashing out counts to try and quickly work out what's going on. And so I was confident that we were able to actually live this Moonblast and actually deal a decent amount of damage to Fini. And so we actually outspeed as well, which is a nice piece of information. But so Tapu Fini is now going to switch out because actually the Misty Terrain is far more valuable to Gypsy at this point than anything else. So we then go for another Shadow Ball in the hope that Tapu Fini was going to be staying on the field so we could actually take it out. But Gypsy switches it out into Ho-Oh, and so Ho-Oh is able to go for the Earthquake, which safely KOs us. So we're now into a position where I believe we are 5v3, and so actually the issue is those that the game is already lost at this point, because Landorus is not in a position where it is able to take on the rest of Gypsy's squad, and actually our main firepower is all gone. So here I'm just trying to lull a certain kind of trying to just lure stuff out so that Salazar's able to click Toxic. But so the Landorus is out here, and if it's Scarf, it ends the game here. If it goes for kind of like the correct move, and so it actually goes for a knockoff on the Yashi Berry, and so I calc it, and so that's quite an offensive one, which led me to believe that it was Scarf. And so we actually misclicked there for the HP flying. I was going to go for the U-turn. Oh wait, no, I didn't have a U-turn. Okay, no, I didn't misclick. I can remember my prep. I did originally have U-turn on it. But so we clicked the HP flying to get a little bit of chip off. And so what we see here though is actually Mega Latios is now in a position where it is Mega Latios happens to be the win con this week. And is able to safely set up Calm Mind versus Sylveon. I'm just kind of looking to see whether I can. I'm not sure. Just kind of sort of stall it out / cause other issues. And so it's shown recover. So if it's Psyshock, Dragon Pulse, if we start setting up curses through some sort of miraculous luck, we might be able to put up some sort of fight. But instead I go into Salazzle here so we've seen the Calm Mind, so we are able to safely get off Toxic, because again we're just trying to play for almost kind of like honour in taking the chip and stuff. But so we sack off Salazzle for Toxic, and so actually at this point neither Landorus nor Sylveon is in a position where so it's able to live a Psyshock. Or at least I think Sylveon lives on a slither, but we're so far gone that it makes no difference. And so so we have Sylveon out here versus Mega Latios as it goes for Psyshock. We go for Baton Pass again because just trying to eke out the number of turns. You never know, we might be able to luck our way into chipping this down with poison and then uber critting everything else, because you know you can live in hope. So we re-switch out into Sylveon because we really are trying to just eke out the best position possible to lose in. And so we have Landorus back in again. We've brought this down to about 60%, which again, it's just one of those things. I'm not sad with how this game went because it was an absolutely horrible matchup. We actually outspeed, which was kind of interesting. As we go for the HP flying, but it does nothing, and Mega Latios finishes us. So we lose 5-0 to Gypsy. But in all honesty, this is probably the best game that I've played so far this season, bar possibly versus Garchomp. Austin. I thoroughly enjoyed myself because I managed to show off tech. I hope you guys enjoyed the game as much as I did. I was just so proud of the Sylveon. Week 6, we are facing Bird of the New South Wales, who also has an absolutely disgusting squad. I quickly just want to talk on a couple of the free agencies I've made. So we did a big shuffle up, so I can't remember my whole squad from before. But so what I can tell you is that so the ones that have stayed on the team are Solgaleo, Landorus, Mega Gyarados, Salazzle and Giratina. So that means that we dropped like Paragonal, Lurantis, Alolan Golem, Excelgor, and Sylveon. And so we have subsequently picked up Scolipede, Rotom Frost, Breloom, Comfey, and Corsola. The general thinking behind this is that we got absolutely thumped, destroyed by dark types in the first 3 weeks. They caused far too many issues, and I desperately needed some sort of fighting coverage on my team. And so Breloom fits the bill for that. And we also, I wasn't enjoying using Sylveon apart from this game. I just couldn't really get it to work properly. So we've now got Comfey, which has 2 quite nice abilities in Triage and Natural Cure. It is well known for being the Calm Mind, Draining Kiss sweeper. We have Corsola as a second rocker to take some pressure off Landorus. Rotom Frost is a choice item magnet. It also has screens, amongst other things. And finally, we have Scolipede. Scolipede is another one which I have seen put in work in the past. I just need to properly utilise it. With speed boost and setup, along with as many hazards as you'd like, this one comes in handy more often than not. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week. As I said, Bird next week should be a good one. I hope you guys will enjoy. Have a wonderful week, and I shall see you on Discord, wherever. Be sure to join the BBL Discord. It is very much alive whilst we're on. Feel free to come at me there. I'm going to regret that because some idiot like Bash is going to at me just for no reason. But yeah, have a good week, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.